Hello, fantastic scholars. I'm looking now at Module 3, Part 1, and I hope you are too. I ended up turning Module 3 into two parts. Part is due on October 12th, the other part is due on the 19th. The sources were many. In fact, I'm not covering every single source and what they mean, the ethics around them, and how to evaluate them. I'm hoping the evaluation portion will cover a lot of ground. I definitely want to make sure you understand what academic, scholarly, and peer-reviewed articles are, primary and secondary sources, newspapers, articles, of course, are secondary sources, and social media research. Those have to do with your final project, and I believe mostly will cover a lot of ground you may need to cover in your academic life immediately and in the future. So let's get this going. Of course, this is the neat video that I am producing, and I'm going to talk about using resources to find sources, because I know when I'm talking about resources and sources, it's sort of confusing. But let's think of it this way. There are things that create different types of information, writers, people, organizations, etc. These go into a grocery store. This is what I call a resource because it has all these things inside of it created by other people. And finally, if you're just looking for a bag of chips, that's the source itself, the small unit or thing. So when we look at something like the Urban Dictionary, we have all types of people, creators, and otherwise putting into the Urban Dictionary. The Urban Dictionary is a resource. It's a grocery store full of definitions, wild and scandalous. And finally, the thing is, you're just looking for one description, one source, one piece. And that's sort of when I'm talking about it. If you found yourself confused, and yes, you should, that's the description. But I need you to know that they may not be true across all disciplines because definitions change. And that's why a lot of my research that I'm talking to you about, one of the big things you have to do is look into the background and come up with your definitions, because the way you're using something or a concept may be different than your readers may read it. And that is part of your research process, defining things. But here we are, we're in scholarly article world. I'm just going to touch on right now, because you have been collecting citation elements, last names of the author, last name, first initial. You've been collecting the publication date. You've been collecting the title of the author. If it's inside of something, you've been collecting that information as well. Even though you don't know what a digital object identifier is or a DOI is, likely I've been having you collect those, because at the end in our project, we're going to put them together into a citation in your references section. It's going to look like this. See, second line is a hanging indent. Beginning and ending numbers. Everything I've been having you collect has a pure and absolute meaning. And one of the biggest meanings is if you're using materials that doesn't have all these citation elements, why are you using it? You might need to move on. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in evaluation. But I wanted to pop this image up in your mind, even though it's far down in the modules, because this is what we're aiming towards. And that's why in your annotation updates every week, you're collecting that information. Now, I have a lot of videos in this section, so I'm going to kind of go over it. Scholarly versus popular versus trade magazines. I have a little visual, and I also put it down here in text in case you're working with a different type of mobile device. If you need this information a different way, you let me know and I will produce it for you. This video is pretty long and it's going to go over the anatomy of a scholarly article. So I'm not going to do that here, but I also have a theme length diagram so you can go over the pieces and understand what they mean, to understand what you're looking for, and to understand the definitions I'm using. I also have included the diagram script so that you can further understand it. This is actually one of the more important pieces of academic research, as more than likely at first you might be asked for one of these. As time goes on, you will have entire paper. In fact, your dissertation primarily have nothing but this type of article in it. So I really, really want to go hard and make sure you understand what it is, because once you see it, you really can't unsee it. So after this module, you're totally going to see it. I have a little quiz for you to make sure that you understand the information and the main points. I also wanted to kind of go over quantitative versus qualitative. I found this video for you. He's really pretty good. I built this infographic to further underline what they are, why they're important, where they're used, advantages and disadvantages. Check those out. And I also put it in text in case that's easier for you to manage. Now this is really important because, here we go. Our annotation this week will be about finding a scholarly article that's quantitative and a scholarly article that's qualitative. Now, I'm going to go over part of this here. See, I want to make sure you understand to get to the library's databases, you go to the library and how you find a database if you know the name. In this case, you'll be using ProQuest. Down here, you're going to be using Academic Search Complete. I chose these two databases because they're broad, they're general, they cover everything from aerospace to zoology. Now, if for some reason these do not work for you, touch back, contact me, talk to me, and we'll look at a different database. Because guess what? We have 100. But I really like for you to know these, because these two databases could cover a huge amount of your work, even up to your doctoral dissertation. So I'm very excited you're going to get to know how to do these. Here, I'm going to go show you what some of the directions mean, because what I want you to do is take your keywords in your topic and add an additional keyword, quantitative or qualitative, in there, because that's going to give you different types of information. If you go back to why we want one thing over the other, you're going to want to have some facts and figures and numbers, some very hard types of science. But additionally, sometimes you're going to want to know the science where the questions are open-ended. You want to know where the diaries are. You want to know the narrative, the discussions with people, and people's perspective. Because it's one thing to understand what happens to people in a waiting room. Say they've been waiting 60 minutes. They're still there. They have these certain things going on with them that you can count numerically. They've been here. There's this many people. This many people give up at a certain time, etc., etc. But if you go into something that's not quantitative, like that measure, and go into the qualitative, what are these people doing in this emergency room? You're finding stories, perspectives. Why are they using the emergency room over their doctor? Why do they leave? Do they give up? At what point do they leave? What's going on in this room? And when you're making decisions about change, it's great to have both perspectives. In fact, you could actually look for mixed methods research as well. But here, I'm pulling them apart because I want you to understand what they are. And once you find these two articles, you're going to do what you've been doing, collect the citation pieces. But you're going to go up now into a 100-word description of this particular article. And I very specifically want you to describe the research methodology in your article. That's right, the numbers of people, what they're doing, how they're measuring, all that type of detail. And finally, in 3 brief sentences, could you tell me some of the main differences between the two articles that you found? I would really love to hear that from you. Now, how I'm going to grade this is much like I've been grading the others. I have not produced a rubric. You will be graded simply on completing this information. Simple. It will start getting a little bit more complicated, but right now, you fill out every line of this information, find these articles. That is what your grade is based on, completion. Now, if you don't know how to do these things about, in terms of looking for things on the database, stay with me. If not, if you already know how to do this, I look forward to seeing your paper. So I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to go to the databases. I've asked you to find Academic Search Complete, and I realize I need to change the name. I will change it to Premier. Sorry about that. And you're going to go in here to do your research. A page will come up with some search boxes, handy. We're going to type in COVID. You're going to see something wonderful happen. Do you see what it just did? Oh, if you don't have these keywords, copy and make them happen. And now I'm going to put in the term quantitative. I'm going to hit search. There's a lot of different things we can do here, but for the purposes of this, we are just going to find an article that roughly fits your question and your thesis. And you're going to go down here to select full text. You're also going to select scholarly and peer reviewed. And you have 69 articles with this particular search. So you should be able to find something here. And they're all full text and ready for you to go. I'm going to go ahead and just go into one of these. If it distresses you that these may be hard to read, this is this is exactly how you should feel right now. This is sort of standing up on your tippy toes in some fashion, but I want to tell you this is part of the process. I want you to feel very familiar with parts of this, but very not familiar with others, so you can start working on your skills and your comfort level. Once you start reading these scholarly articles, you'll start understanding how they're put together. And if you read them backwards, sometimes reading the conclusions first, you're going to get a lot more out of them. Now remember, the abstract is not what you're using. You're going to the full text, so make sure you read these. Using the conclusions is a far better way to go than using the abstract, but here I'm asking you to actually look at the parts of the paper, including the methodology. Over here on the right hand side, I am not asking you to do this, but it does have a cite button. It does include APA, which we're working on, but guess what? It is APA 6th edition, which this is pretty close. When you're filling out your pieces about the authors, you could pretty much come here and copy it. Here are the authors. Here is the date, notice in parentheses. Here is the title. It is capitalized correctly. In APA, nothing is capitalized except for the first word, proper nouns and noun phrases, and a word following a colon. So if we were correcting this, this A would actually be capitalized, but we're not there yet. I just want you to know that is a thing. Copy and correct. This is the name of the journal, is italicized, as is the volume number. This is the issue number. We have pages 1 to 8, beginning to end, and the DOI. And this is pretty good, except for this, but you can use these pieces, copy them, different pieces, and fill in the form that you have for this, so that you understand how these pieces work together. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. As always, if you have a question, please ask me. Not all research fits one size. It's not one and done, and it's absolutely not one size fits all. So, if something comes up, or if you have questions, I am here and part of your learning experience. Do have a great, great week.